Hi, welcome to this video in which I'm going to talk a little bit about my short stories, which I've titled Horrible Endings. I always enjoyed when authors would give interviews or write about how they were, what was going through their mind when they wrote a story or a book. And I decided a long time ago that if I would ever write some fiction, I would do the same thing. So that's why you're here. That's why I made this video. I'm gonna have a couple spoilers in this talk here, so if you don't want to hear those, read the stories first or stick your fingers in your ears, so it won't spoil the story too much for you. So that's fair warning. You also should know that if you haven't read the books before, in each book in each short story there's a link to a page on my website where you can actually see more information, which is basically your resource page for the story, which gives you background information on some of the events, some of the characters, a couple of Easter eggs, stuff like that, and obviously videos such as this one. Every time that I release a new short story, I'll put another video up and some more information, so you can check on that every now and then, so as to see if there's anything new. I'll always make sure that that page is up to date, so if something changes, I'll add up to it. If you want to know the link, you can watch in the description here below the video, or you can just go to my website demeere.com and /horrible endings. So that said, first a little bit more information about where I came up with the idea of these short stories. It's basically very simple. When I was a young guy, when I was a kid, when I watched a movie or a TV show, I would prefer the bad endings to the good ones. The whole Disney thing of the good guy always wins and puppies and rainbows and all that stuff, that didn't really appeal to me. It just didn't. Maybe it was because I was really young. I think it was about 10 or 11 when I started reading Greek tragedies, which resonated a whole lot more with me because they usually end really badly. I enjoyed those a lot. Or I watched Twilight Zone, the second series, not the first one, when I was a kid, and that always those episodes also very often had a bad ending or this nasty twist at the end, and that kind of thing appealed a whole lot more to me. So I naturally gravitated towards the books and movies and TV shows and so on, where it doesn't really end all that well. It's just a personal preference, so it won't be that much of a surprise to you that when I started writing fiction, that's the kind of stuff that I came up with. So here's the thing: I'm not alone. I'm not the only guy who's like this. We're not exactly legion, but there's plenty of us out there who prefer the bad endings to the good ones. So and it's with those people in mind that I wanted to write this kind of story. I'm not claiming ownership for this idea. It's not like I'm the first guy to come up with it. It's just something that I thought it would be fun to write, and that's why I did it. Some of the stories that I wrote, and that I am going to write, are a little bit longer than others. Some are shorter. It just depends. I don't have a set word count in mind. It's basically the story dictates where it wants to go, and it takes the number of words it takes. And that's just something that I'm the first guy to discover how long it is, basically. But there's no real consistency there, and that's just how the writing process works for me. One of the things you also always see is that there's this commonality between all the stories, and that's first of all that they really end badly, hence the title Horrible Endings. But at the same time, usually somebody dies in there, and very often it's the protagonist, which explains the cover with the skull. And another thing is that one of the commonalities is that I like to write about the how should I put it? I like to use the writing devices and writing tricks that I like to read about. For instance, one of them is called Rude Awakenings, and that's you see it often in movies as well, where the hero or the protagonist is rendered unconscious or is knocked out or whatever, and when he comes to or he wakes up, the worst thing that could have happened has happened, but that's what he wakes up to. I really like that. So you'll notice several stories where that happens, and I hope you enjoy reading that too. So that's a little bit of background information. I'm just checking my notes here, see if I'm not forgetting anything. There's a couple more things that I should mention. One of the things that I also like to do in fiction, because I like to read about it, is that just twisting the knife into the characters. It's when I get an idea for a story, I start writing, and my default setting is to look for the worst possible ending that I can come up with. And afterwards, when I finish the first draft, just go over it again and just add, twist the knife a little bit more. For instance, in Deadly Sin #3, where we have Mrs. Scurry being used by Morax to damn her to hell. At first, she came in. That was the whole thing with the stock crashing, and then she basically dies of a heart attack. And I read that afterwards, and I said it's not bad enough. It's this could be a whole lot worse. So I made some changes where I made a run to make sure. At her age, running is not a good idea anyway. But she has the stress of that stock crashing. Then I made a run to make her even more tired. Then when she walks into the office, Morak just flat out ignores her, pissing her off some more. And he basically becomes this obnoxious and increasingly disrespectful guy to just egg her on and make her go totally nuts and spike her blood pressure. And basically he's provoking that heart attack. He can't kill her, but he can make it such that she basically blows a fuse and takes herself out. And I was looking for ways to do that, for instance, and then I added the maggots and the whole thing with the squishing under his feet, and to just make it worse. And so my whole mindset is always just how can I torture my character a little bit more. This only works, however, if you as a reader have an emotional response to that. So I typically, with a few exceptions, try to set it up that you have some sympathy or empathy at least for the main characters. For instance, in Dead End, John and Sarah are about to get married. They went through this horrible ordeal, but it turns out that they're meant to be together, and he's going to propose. So everything's fine and dandy until the horrible ending. So you kind of feel for them. In Cold Death, you've got Albanov, who's actually a hero, who is trying to rescue his crew from the ice, and basically he's a good guy, and you kind of root for him, and they make it through, and that's when shit happens and the bad stuff starts. Or for instance, in Stairway to Hell, you've got Jack, who's basically a pretty rough around the edges kind of guy. He's not a bad guy, but he's not really a sweetheart either, and but he'd rather die than be turned into a monster. So there's another heroic thing, twist to it, is that he's actually quite an impressive character, and he gets taken out as well. So the only real difference for now is in Deadly Sin #3, in which I really wanted you to dislike Mrs. Scurry and get this sense of she serves her right, that she's going to hell, and that's good for her because she deserves it. Which is for a bunch of reasons which I'll explain in another video. Another aspect to the Horrible Ending series is that I specifically wanted to write short stories, which means that you never give everything in a short story. You have to leave stuff out, because if you put all the background stuff in there and everything that leads up to all the situations, well, you have a full novel. And I didn't really feel like writing that for a bunch of other reasons as well. Which means that you have to use your imagination a whole lot more as a reader, and I think that's a good thing. If I give you enough elements to fuel that imagination, which I try to do, you know what scares you more than I do. So your imagination can scare you a whole lot more than I can, and that's what I try to do, is trigger that little bit in hopes that your mind fills in the backstory a little bit, and it can come up with all sorts of crazy things that are scary, a lot more than if I just say, this is it. My point of view is that anticipation of something bad is usually worse than the event itself. because you really don't know what's going to happen, and you make all these scenarios in your head on how it can go wrong and how horrible it'll be, and then when it actually does happen, very often it's not that bad. So that's kind of the way that I wanted to tackle all these short stories, by not giving everything, not chewing it for you and handing it to you on a golden platter. It's an approach. Some people like it, some don't. I like it. And another reason why I did that is that I just hate it when books take so long to get to the freaking point. Or when there are these long intros and explanations about what's going on, and the story is just doesn't get started. I can't remember which book it is, but one time, however much that I have an enormous respect for Stephen King as an author and for everything he's done, I started reading one of his books, and I'm just blanking on the title, and it just was page after page after page of description and introduction, and nothing happened. And I was reading for I think about half an hour, and still nothing had happened. I knew how the whole town looked, what it looked like, and what was going on there, but there was no story. It just didn't get started, and that's the kind of stuff that I really don't like. So I usually try to either have an action scene, something happening right in the beginning, or if that doesn't work for some reason, what I'll try to do is give you solid information right away where something is going on, and you get a feel for the story from the beginning, which means that I try to skip the boring parts basically. Doesn't always work out that way, but see how that goes. And then a final point that I want to mention is that one of the ideas that I'm playing with for horrible endings is a couple of things. First of all, I'm just going to bring them out one by one as I finish writing them. When I really have no idea, because I write fiction when I'm stuck with non-fiction books. At this point, when I'm recording this, it's April 2014. I'm busy writing 3 non-fiction books: self-defense, martial arts, and so on. And some of them, sometimes you get stuck, or you have to wait for other people or feedback or research to come in. I can write another one, and there's days when it just doesn't work out, the non-fiction writing, and that's when I write fiction. So that means that there's no set schedule, and I do it, so my mind can be occupied with something else and be a little bit creative, as opposed to writing the non-fiction stuff, which is a very different type of writing. And it kind of helps me rejuvenate for when I have to do the non-fiction stuff again. And I usually find solutions to whatever was holding me back in a non-fiction book. So it's kind of an alternating thing that I do, and that's why there's no set schedule for the fiction writing. Eventually what I'll do is bring all the short stories together in a collection and bring those out. So right now the short stories will only be in ebook version, electronic version, but the collection will eventually be in print as well. And what I'll do is just get all the short stories that I've published so far, put them together, along with a bunch of new ones that won't come out as separate short stories, so that it's worth your while actually getting the collection as well, because there'll be new ones. And an idea that I'm playing with, and that'll depend on you, the reader, and the feedback that I get is some of those short stories that I wrote. I've got a lot of ideas about what went into the whole build-up of that phase, where it went wrong, and what's going on in that world, and basically writing a short novel about the short story. So basically expanding on that short story and create and turning it into maybe not a full-fledged novel, but a lot more than just a short story that you got. And that'll totally depend on the feedback that I get, and which stories that people like best, which stories they're interested in knowing more about, and on the other hand, how much of a grasp that I already have on the whole world that is part of that story. So that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed this whole explanation about why I started writing these short stories and what the whole setup is. When you go to my resource page for this book, for the short stories, you'll see that, again, like I mentioned, I'll be adding new videos and new information as the new stories get published. So I'm hoping to publish a new short story. This is beginning of April 2014. I'm hoping to publish one every other week. because I've got 4 or 5 already written. And then afterwards we'll see, you know, how fast the progress is. So this page will at first be populated really quickly with a lot of information, and then it'll be stable, and I'll just add stuff to it as I get to it and as I find it, or as I get feedback from readers like you who say, oh, this is an interesting thing to add to that research page. So it's a little bit interactive that way. So that said, I hope you enjoy the stories a lot. I had a lot of fun writing them, and I hope you have just as much fun reading them. Thanks.